Hello everyone and welcome back to Risk of Rain. As was predicted, today we'll be playing as the miner. We'll be going into Monsoon. I will admit openly at the very beginning of this that this class is what I consider to be my worst, but I'll still do my best. Without further ado, let's get this thing started. I want to take a quick moment here at the beginning to point out that the miner dual wields pickaxes. I just thought I'd point that out because I find that a little bit awesome. Anyways, on to his move list. He's got a very different moveset than most. He's a melee class. His main attack, Crush, deals 140% of his base damage. It's a bit of a weird attack, honestly. It does a lot of damage relatively quickly. His base attack speed, is relatively high, all things considered, and its hitbox is deceptively large. It also, along with Handy's Hurt and the Enforcer's Shotgun, is the only piercing basic attack in the game that will go through absolutely everything. In all honesty, it is one of the better basic attacks in the entire game. His second move, Drill Charge, charges for 2 seconds, and will deal damage based upon how long you charged it. It deals a maximum of 600% of his base damage. And also, it makes you invulnerable for the entire time, but it is actually somewhat deceptive. It actually makes you invulnerable for longer than the dash actually lasts. You are safe for a decent amount of time afterwards. It's a relatively strange thing and very difficult to get used to. His third attack, Backblast, it will send you backwards a significant quantity, again, make you invulnerable while you're doing it, and will hit anything behind you. And it actually has a longer range than how far you dash. It deals 200% of your damage and stuns whatever it hits. It is one of his best attacks by far. And then there's the staple ability of this character, To the Stars. Yes, it's a Gurren Laggan reference. What To the Stars does is it essentially gives him a double jump. You can use it while in the air, and you will jump again. And it will also, if you use it on the ground, just sort of give you a little bit of a bunny hop. Then he throws down 3 explosive charges. These explosive charges each do 180% of his damage, so if you can manage to hit something with all of them, it does an insane amount of damage from there. It also kind of... It's one of the best moves, design-wise, in the game to me. Because the thing about it is that it gives him a lot of depth. It's a relatively simple move, all things considered, but the fact that it gives him that double jump, and also, I don't get the chance to show it off in this run, but if you have a rusty jetpack and you use it at the same time as you jump, you just sort of fly. It's a really strange occurrence, but it's really neat to actually utilize. I guess it's one of those bugs that you can consider a feature. I'll also be adding in those little collected segments at the end of every speed up, because I know that it can be a little bit confusing to look down at the item log there. Now, the way to play this character, he is incredibly risky. He's one of the characters that when you first pick him up, you are going to die all the time. He requires you to really get in the faces of your enemies and not cower away ever, almost. The thing is that what causes this is his main flaw, and it's that all of his attacks, aside from Crush, have a massive cooldown. Both Backblast and To the Stars have a 5-second long cooldown, while Drill Charge has an 8-second long cooldown, and that does not activate when you activate it. It activates after you do the dash. So while you're charging, it's not recharging. The thing is that after you get him down, he is, in my opinion, one of the best classes in the game. Mainly due to those invulnerability frames. He has the ability to pretty much just get the hell out whenever he wants to, because the combination of To the Stars and Backblast makes it so that you can just, jump out of almost any given situation. That said, I'm about to show off one of his primary enemies, jellyfish. Jellyfish are a massive ass to this character, because he really doesn't have a good answer for them. Aside from a fully charged drill charge, he'll seldomly be able to hit them without getting hit in response, and he is not strong. He's pretty damn squishy. That said, what I did up there, and what I'm going to continue doing here, is using To the Stars for, in my opinion, one of its best uses, which is that it is the only attack in the game, aside from homing attacks, and in a way, the Engineer's basic attack, that faces directly downwards. It is the only one that allows you to kind of drop bomb things. And that is what I use for a lot of this section here. I've sped through most of it because, well, it's a lot of stuff winds up happening, but it's not anything really interesting. Essentially, you can use To the Stars for a good lot of different encounters simply due to the fact that it faces down. But the big problem with him, again, is his squishiness. For a melee character, aside from the mercenary, he is one of the weakest as far as health and armor goes. But the thing is that you're meant to use his invulnerability frames to your advantage in that sense. So you need to kind of know exactly what your enemies are going to wind up doing. In the case of this right here, you can see how I'm jumping around a lot, using To the Stars all the time, all that kind of thing. Essentially, that is primarily meant to just keep me outside of the hitbox of what they do. And I have a lot more ability to conserve myself than I would if it weren't for the items that I have. I have the medkit, which is slowly becoming one of my actually preferred items. And along with that, I have the Hermit Scarf. And the meat nuggets. The thing with the meat nuggets is that it's actually really useful for classes like the Miner, Handy, all those melee classes. Because, generally speaking, other classes aren't going to be very likely to actually pick up the meat nuggets themselves. While these ones are, due to the fact that they're constantly in close quarters combat. Another thing that we got that's relatively useful for the Miner in specific is the Fire Shield. With the Fire Shield, you get that kind of, when things hit you, they get knocked back and they get stunned. It kind of helps you to mitigate possible gigantic crowds of things hitting you all at the same time. Of course, the barbed wire is always useful for melee classes, and the Lensmaker's classes, while I've showed off before how they can be abused, they can only really do that if you have command activated. But what I'm trying to get across here is what the Miner is a very deceptive character class, because, strangely enough, he's actually a crowd controller. That is his main purpose. All of his attacks deal piercing damage, and will hit whatever's in their radius. So, by using them properly, by getting your stuns off with Backblast, by kind of dropping in a lot of the time with To the Stars, and also To the Stars, if you just use it on the ground without jumping, you are much more likely to get the triple hit off. Using that as your primary source of, like, damage, and also a way to keep yourself safe for a little while. And then, of course, Drill Charge. Like, Drill Charge, one of the things that I have to note about it, big time, is just whatever you do, don't get obsessed with fully charging the thing. It's not like steady aim with the sniper, because you can move while you're using it. So, you can do what I did there and back away first and then get it fully charged, but don't be afraid to use it to run the heck away at some points. Now, I was lying before, we actually did get a Rusty Jetpack, and I just showed off what happens with it if you have it and you use To the Stars when you jump at the same time. You just... that. Now, another thing that we got that, of course, is going to be a great help. It's a great help no matter who you are, but I would say even particularly with the Miner, is the Happiest Mask. Because, as I said before, he's a crowd controller. That is his primary purpose. And due to that, when you have things like the Happiest Mask around, and added on to that, I have the Jar of Souls with an embryo, which reduces its cooldown. There are just ghosts fucking everywhere. Because every time I kill something, it becomes a ghost. Whenever a ghost kills something, it becomes a ghost. I can make a ghost of everything. So, essentially, it's a chain reaction of ghosts. I make a ghost of something, it kills that ghost, kills the thing that I made the ghost out of, and then I make another ghost. It's just ghosts. Everywhere. So many ghosts. Now, another thing with, the Miner is the fact that you can combo with him. I wouldn't recommend it, though. The thing with him is that, as I said before, he's got this huge cooldown on almost all of his moves. So comboing with him is actually, I would say it's a bad idea. Because it's tempting. It's tempting to go in there, just like, go in there, use 2 of the stars as an entry method, get off a Black Blast, use the stun to charge up your drill charge, and then run through all of them. But the thing is that then afterwards, you have no method of escape beyond your natural means. So, what I would recommend instead is to use 2 of the stars liberally, along with Backblast. Because the 2 of them have incredible damage potential. You have 2 of the stars, which allows you to just sort of blast everything, and Backblast allows you to stun them, letting you get a good couple of crushes in without having to jump or anything. Drill Charge, I would almost recommend it more as a just direct smack them thing and get out. Just smack and get out. Now right here with the Imp Overlord, I'm kind of showing off a thing. The Imp Overlord is one of the easiest bosses in the game, and that was pretty much why. Because you can just jump over most of his attacks if you've got a Rusty Jetpack, or even if you don't, in most cases. Now, another thing worth noting with him is that don't use Backblast as a method of getting places quicker. Use Drill Charge for that, and don't charge it at all. Because Backblast actually, you kind of stand still for a little while afterwards. You kind of have like a little bit of a time period to get back on your feet before you can take any other actions, including moving. And as such, using it to try to move faster is actually not going to work. Now, what I would recommend, or at least try to, with this, is attempt to get a lot of items that are on-hit items. On multi-hit items. As I explained before, like, on-hit items are ones that will calculate once based upon the hit, and anything that's hit by it will all get affected. On multi-hit it will calculate for each individual. So what I meant there was actually on-hit status ailment items. For example, the Rusty Knife and stuff like that. I don't have any yet, but later on in this I do show off why that's so potent, and it's essentially because the Miner has no attacks that don't hit multiple things. And also, this is what I mean by him being a crowd control monster. I'm currently just jumping back and forth, using Crush over and over again, and using 2 of the stars when I notice that I have it. Although I'm also running into a little bit of a weird thing, because 2 of the stars, its hitbox for, like, its collision actually starts above the Miner. And so I'm pretty frequently trying to use it while jumping to give myself the largest amount of safety possible, and it's actually going into the ceiling. And I'm almost dead because I got a little bit greedy. And that is one of the biggest things with the Miner, is to know when to run. Because you're going to have to. He's not like Handy, where you can just, like, look at your drone count and know when you have to run. With this guy, you just have to keep constant track of your health total, or you're going to wind up dead. The other thing that I'd recommend with him as far as items to try to get, would be to try to get things like the ukulele, and like the charge field generator. Things that assist you with your crowd control. Because any crowd control character in this what they need is more crowd control. They don't need stuff to help them take down single targets. Single targets in this game are easy. What they need are things to help them control the crowd better. Another thing to note is that this character is one of the ones that the most desperately needs items like the medkit, like the mysterious vial, all of those healing type items. Because otherwise he won't have the sustain he needs to really get his crush damage off. Because in the end, that is your main source of damage with him, is to just jump around and keep crushing everything as much as you possibly can. And if he can't sustain himself while he's at it, you'll just wind up not doing enough damage and wind up dead. Another thing to keep track of with him is what enemies you can and cannot knock back. If you can knock back an enemy, it becomes significantly easier because they get stunned for a little bit, and as I said before, Crush's hitbox is a lot bigger than you think it is. Because if you hit something that's directly in front of you with it, you will be able to hit it again before it's out of that stun. You can stun lock a lot of enemies if you can actually get the damage off to knock them back. For example, there's an achievement with the Miner. In fact, it's one of the most difficult achievements in the game, which is to get to experience level 10 without getting hurt more than once. And this is what made me learn about that knockback thing, is that being able to knock back Lemurians, and hell, you can even knock back sand crabs early game, has come in very handy for when I got that achievement. You'll be seeing that later. Now, as always, I'm gonna note this character's matchups with Archerbugs, because Archerbugs are kind of that one enemy type in this game that just, like, it really depends on who you're playing, how well you do against them. And the Miner does not do particularly spectacularly. He can, but not very often, because you need to get close enough to them to get a crush off to actually be able to do anything to them. And getting that close to them, they hover, like, ever so slightly outside of the range where you can get to them easily. And so my recommendation, again with Archerbugs, is to try to get them when you can, but right now, I'm relying on my charge field generator more than anything to kill these things off. And normally I'd be relying on, like, drones, but my laser drone actually died a little bit back there. And as such, I'm just kind of running a lot, because the quantity of Archerbugs makes it so that engaging the enemy crowd is actually a bad idea. So instead, I'm just running, and when I can, I'm doing the jumping to the stars, like, super jump thing, to just kind of jump above, hit, and then land on the other side of the crowd. And when I need to, I am just rushing them and crushing while I'm at it, because, again, the hurt and hop thing with Handy, it applies to the Miner, to jump around and hit stuff a lot. The Miner gets a unique, well, not unique, but he gets a bonus stat per level. Unlike most classes, every class gets 4 stats boosted every level. Health, regen, damage, and armor. The Miner gets bonus attack speed. And due to this actually affects a lot of things about him that you kind of have to keep track of his level for. One of them being that it, increases his crush attack speed, which is great, by the way, because that attack is much better if it can go faster. Hitting things more is a good thing, who knew? But also, it decreases the time it takes to charge Drill Charge. And as such, the higher your level, the more and more useful that attack becomes, because you can charge it a lot faster. Also, something I want to note right here. You may notice that I have a hit list, and that I have an infusion. These items are really useful, but at the point that I got them, and with the way that this run is essentially, is going at this point, they're both damn near useless to me. I know that I'm saying the hit list, which is one of the best items in the game, period, has next to no use when you're getting it this late in the game. Because if you're... At this point, you are behind the clock already, and you can't take the time to get it to its full extent. You just need to rush through. And that's precisely what I'm going to do, actually. I am going to be rushing through this stage. This is why I'm not going in there getting any of those containers. I'm just staying right by the door and dealing as much damage as I can to these things, just to mitigate the fact that they're there in the first place. I mean, hell, it looks... I can't even tell if there's a bladed enemy down there, but there might be. It's not displaying on the boss meter, but still, every now and then I do get paranoid. And so I'm just trying to get these things out of my way and move on. I'm just going to try and get straight to Providence as fast as I can. Something I forgot to mention in our first video doing Monsoon, and hell, our second video at that, is Monsoon actually does do one other thing to you, besides, you know, increase the damage over time, increase the general difficulty, and all that kind of stuff. It also actually starts you with less health. In the miner's case, he starts with 168 health normally. He starts off with 118 on Monsoon. In fact, it just reduces every character's health, max health, by 50. Just across the board, all of them 50. It's not a percentage or anything like that. So, for example, the Huntress gets 90 maximum HP. So, there's that. And something I should know, because I've tested this, the artifact of glass is not affected by this in the same manner. I don't think it's affected at all, in fact. So there's that. Now, you may notice that I switched out my Jar of Souls a little while ago. That was definitively on purpose. I'm going straight for Providence, as I mentioned before. I'm not taking any time to farm around. In fact, I'm only taking this time to farm around because I might as well. There's still the timer on. And also it turned out remarkably useful because the Rusty Blade, as I said before, is great for the miner. Although it's, you know, so-so against Providence as any character class. But the Jar of Souls is just completely worthless against him. Aside from in one specific case, you can't clone anything that comes at you from him. Those two Temple Guards are the only thing. You can't clone the Umbra, you can't clone anything. You can't make a ghost out of Providence. Providence has no soul. And so, I switched it out, and the other thing is that I'm not going to even try and fight that Bladed Clayman. I am, however, going to fight the things that are currently in this room with me. And looking back on it now, this was probably actually a little bit unwise, but my general rationale is that I don't have, like, any money, and I have 4 drones to maintain. And against Providence, as the miner, maintaining these things is going to be difficult. I have a lot of spatial reasoning ability in this game. I have a lot of ability in this game in general, but I'm not going to be able to keep them alive. And so I'm going to pretty much just kill these guys off and make my way out. And so here we go. Providence as the miner is a strange beast. A lot of people think that Providence is just kind of made a joke by the miner due to the fact that the miner has so many abilities that give him invulnerability frames. That's all fine and good if you've got the reaction time of a damn god and some form of cooldown reduction ability. Because the thing is that actually dealing damage to him is really difficult. The miner does a lot of damage to a lot of things. To a single target, he becomes a little bit less effective. I mean, he's not as bad as, like, the Enforcer, who becomes completely worthless at doing anything like that, but he's still not all that great. And this is part of the reason why I was glad I got the shield generator, because this means that I can stand right in front of HA Providence and just do as much damage as I can for 8 seconds, and then kind of back off, charge that thing, charge up a drill charge, and go through him at the end. The other thing with Providence is that, because of the way the miner works, you can kind of abuse his AI with To the Stars. And also you can do what I just did there and take a quick risk when he's doing that attack and try and dash through the explosions. But with To the Stars, you can jump high enough to get to trick his teleport, no matter what items you have. Normally you'd need like a couple of rusty jetpacks to be able to jump that high, but since you've got the double jump, you can just do it whenever. You can trick his AI whenever you feel like. Something else that I found relatively confusing up until I played as the miner was whether or not attacks that give you invulnerability frames, like, you know, the Commando's dodge roll, all that good stuff, give your drones invulnerability frames. I was able to confirm it here, they do. And so that period of time after drill charge, after backblast, you do completely protect your drones while you're at that. Now, the Gilded Worms. Strangely enough, the Gilded Worms are actually a bit of a prick to the miner. He doesn't have the damage that Andy does, by any stretch, and also his abilities just kind of miss a lot of the time. Not so much miss as they are just, like, they don't hit much of the worm. Aside from Crush, almost all of his attacks don't really hit much of the worm much of the time, because the worm, a lot of the time, it stays vertical. And so, as such, having a horizontal-facing backblast, a horizontal-facing drill charge, To the Stars just sort of hits the floor. Like, it just doesn't wind up working out very well, so you've really just got to crush them to death. And aside from this specific situation right there, which even that wasn't very ideal, I only hit like 2 segments of them. It's actually pretty difficult to deal with these guys. Like, they're not a joke for the miner at all. That said, you can, you know, dodge their attacks. Their attacks are all really predictable, all that kind of stuff. So, that's a thing all to itself. I'm actually doing a pretty weird strategy here, because I realized my life, and I realized that Providence's third form is always the most threatening. And so what I decided to do here was I decided to try and target one of the worms. Usually I wouldn't recommend this, due to the fact that the worms are usually so close together anyways, and honestly, they don't really do much. I'm instead standing still. I'm standing entirely still, because I have a bustling fungus, and I don't want to be at a health deficit when I go into the fight with Providence, because Providence's second form is going to really, really, really hurt. But here we go. And the main reason why it is that this guy hurts is pretty much these two guys right here. The thing with the miner is that you have to be invulnerable in order to avoid damage a lot of the time. And if Providence is about to take a swipe at you, and you use your backblast or your drill charge to dodge it and hit him, there's a distinct possibility that these two, I've died to this before, that these two will just sort of come in and blast the hell out of you because you didn't keep track of them. And while, yes, you can say that that was my fault and all that kind of stuff, it's probably easier to just take that out of the equation entirely rather than take the risk. The same, to an extent, goes for the Umbra of Providence. When he spawns out that guy, I would recommend trying to take it down. You want there to be only one target on the field, because if that guy comes in after one of your invulnerability frame moves, and you're just sitting there with everything else on cooldown, you're going to have a bad time. And so I would recommend trying to do what I just did there. Try to separate them. Try to keep them in different areas. So when one of them teleports, encourage the other one to teleport in a different place. Try and get one of them on the top, one of them on the bottom. All that kind of stuff. That way you can keep better track of the map, and you can keep better track of how to go about your invulnerability frame moves, how to go about dodging. Now, another thing you might have noticed by this point is that I don't deal that much damage to Providence. Single target damage, just a complete screw-off for the Miner. Another big problem with the Miner is that he's not like most other classes, in that his ability to run away is actually pretty far behind. Almost every other class, in fact every other class except Handy, is able to have that kind of move to just say, no, I'm out of here. While the Miner technically does have 3 of those, the cooldowns on those things are incredibly high, and Providence is just far too aggressive for you to be able to rely on them consistently. You have to be able to shield yourself somehow. Drones are one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to try and use the little glitch with his teleport to try and get him to spawn up top instead of on the bottom. And just keep him off you when his shield is up. When his shield is down, go for him, unless the Umbra is on the field, in which case go for the Umbra. Or try to go for both is another mildly advisable course of action. I would personally honestly say this is one of the hardest Providence fights you can have. Because I would actually say that this is even worse than the Sniper, because Sniper has great single target damage. I would not say it's worse than Handy. Handy has some serious problems with this fight, because he has next to no way of evading the teleport slash. That said, thank God for the shield generator. How? The shield generator. So there we go. One run is the Miner done. I'm reopening the vote, and I'll see you all next time, when we'll be doing a challenge run. Big challenge run. This is not going to be fun. Or maybe it will be. I don't know. Guess we'll just have to wait and find out. See you all then.